You know that feeling, right? You've studied English, maybe
Yeah.
for years. You can understand movies okay, maybe read quite well. But then, when it's time to actually speak, it's like hitting a wall.
Hmm.
It just doesn't flow. And that's what we're diving into today, why that smooth, effortless English feels, well, so hard to reach for so many of you.
It really is a common frustration. And it's fascinating because often the knowledge is there. You might know the grammar rules, have a decent vocabulary.
Right.
But translating that passive knowledge into active, spontaneous speech, that's a whole different ballgame. It's the real-time pressure, the thinking on your feet.
Totally. It reminds me of learning an instrument or maybe like riding a bike,
Yeah, great analogy.
You can read the manual, watch videos, understand the theory of balance, but until you actually get on that bike and, well, probably wobble and fall a few times.
You're not really learning to ride, are you?
Exactly. And that's where consistent practice, speaking practice comes in. It's not just burying your head in a book, it's the doing part. Even if it feels awkward or you make mistakes.
That awkwardness is actually part of the process. Learners sometimes shy away from it. They focus heavily on input reading, listening,
Right.
which is, of course, vital. But for fluency, the output, the act of production, is where the magic happens.
So actually forcing yourself to speak.
Forcing might be a strong word.
Yep.
Yeah, creating opportunities. Putting yourself in situations where you have to string sentences together.
Yeah.
Even simple things like narrating what you're doing during the day out loud.
That sounds maybe a bit strange, but I can see how it helps.
It does. It starts building those pathways in your brain, making recall faster. And it's not just about how much you practice, is it? It's also the type of practice.
Oh, right. You mean like not just repeating set phrases from a textbook.
Exactly. Scripted dialogues have their place maybe early on, but real conversation is unpredictable. You need practice responding to unexpected questions, navigating interruptions, expressing your own actual thoughts.
Seen on your feet.
That's it. And that brings us neatly to vocabulary, doesn't it?
Right.
Because you need the words to think with.
Okay, so vocabulary, but isn't it just about learning more words, like flashcards?
Well, yes and no. Having a good vocabulary size is important, obviously,
Right.
but it's more about knowing how words work together. It's about context and collocation, those natural word partnerships.
Collocations, like strong coffee.
Precisely. You know strong, you know coffee, but you instinctively know or learn that strong coffee is the natural pair, not usually powerful coffee, even though powerful means something similar.
Right, powerful coffee sounds a bit weird.
It does. Fluent speakers use these collocations constantly without thinking. Learning them makes your English sound much more natural, less textbookish.
So it's like having the right puzzle pieces and knowing how they slot together, not just having a big box of random pieces.
That's a perfect way to put it. And then you have the really tricky bits like idioms and phrasal verbs.
Oh yeah, kick the bucket, bite the bullet.
Or even simpler ones like look up, give in, run out of. The meaning often isn't obvious from the individual words. They're everywhere in spoken English, though. You can't really avoid them if you want to sound fluent.
Definitely adds another layer of complexity, which leads us to grammar, I guess. The big G.
Always looming, isn't it? Grammar. Now look, a solid understanding of grammar is the skeleton of the language. It's important.
But. I sense a but coming.
But getting too hung up on perfect grammar, especially when you're trying to speak, that can be fluency's worst enemy.
How so?
Because the fear of making a mistake using the wrong tense, the wrong preposition can just completely freeze you up. You get so focused on avoiding errors that you end up saying nothing at all or speaking really slowly and hesitantly.
Okay, I've definitely felt that. You're mentally checking every single word before it comes out.
Right. And in a real conversation, the main goal isn't usually 100% grammatical accuracy. It's communication. It's getting your message across effectively. Minor errors often don't actually stop understanding.
So it's about finding a balance. Know the grammar, but don't let the pursuit of perfection stop you from actually talking.
That's the key, I think. Focus on clear communication first. Fluency often involves a degree of, well, grammatical flexibility, especially in informal conversation. You refine the accuracy as you go.
Okay, so pulling this all together, it sounds like this feeling of, why can't I speak fluently, often boils down to a mix of things. Not enough active, varied speaking practice, maybe focusing too much on just memorizing words instead of how they're used in real sentences.
Yeah, those collocations and idioms.
Right. And then maybe getting tangled up in grammar rules, that fear of making mistakes holding you back from just communicating.
It's really about shifting from just knowing about English to actively using English, building that skill, that automaticity, through consistent effort in the right areas.
Makes sense. Fluency is a journey, not just a destination you suddenly arrive at after reading enough books.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing process of active engagement.
So, here's a final thought for you listening. Thinking about these different areas, consistent speaking practice, really understanding vocabulary and context, maybe loosening up on perfect grammar, which one feels like your biggest bottleneck right now?
Interesting question.
If you could focus your energy on improving just one of those areas, which one do you suspect might unlock the most progress for you on that journey to fluency? Maybe that's the place to start.